In Britain, we have abandoned rule by a single sovereign. That sovereignty was then disseminated equally amongst all of us. The people we elect to power are supposed to represent our sovereign interests. But how are the people we elect thinking about our interests? The standard economic assumption deployed in political thinking about human behavior has been that we are rational decision makers who are self-interested. From this assumption, what we think ought to matter, both to our representatives and to those around us. We can be convinced of that which is genuinely in our best interest. However, behavioral economics, a new hybrid of psychology and economics, which has become central to how many governments formulate public and social policy, instead assumes that humans are largely irrational and are not capable of making informed decisions about their own long-term best interest. From this assumption, what we think ought not to matter to our representatives, nor our fellow countrymen. Only the opinions of the rational, the experts, truly matter. This approach of behavioral economics seems to me to be what we are seeing in practice as assumptions across the country in various domains, including responses to environmental concern, where everyday men and women are being treated with contempt because increasingly our representatives seem to think that we cannot be trusted to make the right choices about how to behave, and so we must have our behaviors changed. Now, to back up my claim about behavioral economics being central to government public social policy and their attempts to change our behavior, allow me to read the blurb of a 2013 book called Changing Behavior on the Rise of the Psychological State. Quote, Changing Behaviors, the book, charts the emergence of the behavior change agenda in UK-based public policy making since the late 1990s. By tracing the influence of the behavioral sciences on Whitehall policymakers, the authors explore a new psychological orthodoxy in the practices of governing. Drawing on original empirical material, so that which has happened, chapters examine the impact of behavior change policy in the fields of health, personal finance, and the environment. And just to give you a taste, a few of the chapter headings: changing behaviors and new models of man, replanning the street, changing behaviors by spatial design, greening the brain, the pro-environmental behavior change agenda, and the conclusion of this book is nudge, think, steer, punch, searching for the real third way. A similar approach was taken in ancient Greece by the philosopher Plato in his work The Republic, in which he considers what a just society might look like. He concludes that a just society is one ruled by the wise, the philosopher kings, as they are the only ones properly trained to know what the good is and which path is best for the city to take, where everything is controlled by the experts for the greater good of the people. This is a kind of authoritarian, totalizing state control that we rejected in the West in favor of liberalism, which holds that, quote, knowledge comes only from a public process of critical exchange in which the experts and laymen alike participate, end quote. And that is Jonathan Rauch, if you're curious. In my opinion, and this is the last thing I'll say, we must be vigilant to ensure that this temptation does not rear its head again in our society, using the language of social justice and crisis aversion to trick us into a bondage it took us hundreds of years to escape from, which was managed in part here in this very city during the Scottish Enlightenment.